So this is my project on biofuels. I specifically focused on ethanol, which is a renewable source of energy, which is created naturally. So ethanol, sum it up, ethanol is a renewable fuel made from biomass, which is just organic matter, and it's produced through the fermentation of sugars, and it's pretty widely used in the US already. So the source of ethanol, so where the sugars come from for the fermentation process is typically corn. So how the process of creating ethanol occurs is typically the sugars found inside grains will be fermented and then that will produce ethanol. And so the most common grain that they use in the US today is corn, which is grown typically in the Midwest, and then it is dry milled, which is just the process of grinding it up into a flour, which then can be ethanol. Question of ethanol, I have a little diagram here kind of showing how alcohol fermentation works, really breaking it down. But a summary of it is basically after glycolysis, two acetaldehydes are produced, which then produce two ethanol. Um, and that is how ethanol is produced. This is an anaerobic process, so this occurs without the addition of oxygen. And it also, when the two acetaldehydes turn to ethanol, it's the 2 NADH being converted to help produce ethanol. So the development status, ethanol is already one of the most common biofuels in the US and it's widely available. An example of this is in almost all the gas that we use in the US, there's a 10% ethanol in it, which helps oxygenate the fuel, making it have less of a carbon footprint. And another place that you can find ethanol is in beer. So beer is created through fermenting barley typically, and when you ferment barley, which is a grain, the sugars ferment and they produce ethanol. So that's another place that you can find ethanol. So ethanol is already pretty commonly used and found in the US. Next slide. So the carbon for ethanol, since ethanol is a biofuel, it is produced from plant matter and natural um sorry, let me rephrase. So ethanol is a biofuel and biofuels are typically created from biomass, which are like natural materials already found in the environment. And ethanol specifically is created naturally through the process of fermentation. So it has much less of a carbon footprint than other fuels such as fossil fuels, which are large contributors to air pollution because they release CO2 and particulates into the environment, whereas ethanol is naturally produced and does not produce as much of emissions and such. And a prime example of this, going back to how we add ethanol into our gas. So by adding ethanol into our gas, it helps oxygenate the gas, allows the gas to produce less emissions in the air. So the economic impact, I focused on a study conducted at the University of Nebraska. So Nebraska is the second largest producer of ethanol in the US, and they reported that the ethanol industry produced about $3.8 billion in output just from ethanol production. And this also created about 4,632 jobs in the field. So overall, a very positive impact from ethanol. And communication to the public. So there is a biorefinery assistant program, which is a government program that provides loans and funding for people to do research and production of biofuels. And this funding can go out to farms, labs, individuals, and even higher educations to encourage the study of biofuels. And from all the information I gathered, biofuels are already popular in the economy and they seem to be on the rise. So hopefully we see more being incorporated into everyday life. And a plan of action, if funding is no obstacle, I would encourage more industries to incorporate biofuels into their fuel use since it is a renewable and more eco-friendly fuel. And here are my citations. Thank you.